Thanks very much for the intro. It's a real pleasure to be here. What I'd like to talk about, and this is really intended to be very much a non-technical discussion, although I'll drift into a bit of technology as we go. But mainly what we wanted to talk about today was some of the learnings that we've got about how to commercialize innovative IP. And part of what I'm going to actually put up is something which is almost a checklist. And there are a lot of things that we have learned that are absolutely essential to commercializing, mainly processing IP in the mining industry. And some of them are obvious, but quite a few are not obvious things that you need to get right if you want to commercialize your intellectual property. And I do want to try and make it, somewhat interactive. So I'm, really happy to have comments while I talk, and there'll be some time to talk at the end. Now, I'm particularly honoured to be here today. I think one of the things about South East Queensland is that we are really a centre of world innovation in the mining sector, and there are a few constituents that have made this place very important in South East Queensland. One of them is the JKMRC and the broader SMI, which is a very unique institution. We also had Mount Isa Mines, which I believe is one of the most innovative mining companies on the planet, and it had a very, very long track record of innovation. And there were some reasons why MIM was particularly good at innovation. And the partnership between an innovative mining company that had problems that needed solving and strong research institutions has been very, very fruitful. And this sort of close connection between industry and research has really worked very well. I just wanted to, in sort of talking, well, let me just give you a little bit of timeline here. So, I am going to go back 50 years, and MIM, which became Xstrata, which became Glencore, it's probably not widely recognized in the broader community that this company, was the source of many of the key innovations that are used around the world today. It's quite an amazing thing here in South East Queensland. The premier copper smelting technology in the world, Isa Smelt, bringing, in partnership with others, in many cases, bringing Jameson cells to commercial reality, Isa mills, and then later on, Albion process, and then a technology that was particularly in core we're working on, the Toowong process. So there's been a tremendous sort of stream of innovation. Core, as we know it today, in many ways our DNA came out from MIM and also from its close relationships with JKMRC. So we established Core in 2002, and this was a point when Xstrata took over MIM, and Xstrata made some decisions about wanting to have access to technology, but not necessarily wanting to do all of it itself. And that's sort of quite important. So Xstrata did decide to keep a technology business, a very powerful one, which is now Glencore Technology. But it also, basically formed partnerships, and one of them was with us. So we set up Core in 2002. We formed a partnership with Xstrata, as it was then, to commercialize the Albion process, which was pre-commercial at that stage. And then in 2006, we acquired the very long-standing research laboratory, which was then called Hydrometallurgy Research in Albion. We acquired that in 2006, and a lot of that was sort of initiative by Xstrata to keep those assets available and in the hands of people who could work with. And we've worked closely with Glencore ever since. We've had a strong partnership on Albion, and we're currently working on Toowong, and we've learned a lot from both those exercises, which is a part of what I'll talk about today. Just in terms of Core as a business, we try and survive in the environment of doing a lot of technology and innovation stuff, but also we have to pay the bills every day. So we have to run a commercial business, and one of the ways we can do innovation is by having a services business that actually makes a return. So we do we run services activities. We We run met test work, process design, project management activities for mining companies for which we get paid. And we do a lot of that, and it keeps us very closely connected to industry. So our day-to-day activity is doing everything from small scale, bench scale, met test work, process design projects, up to pilot plants, up to helping people implement and commission metallurgical projects. And then, hopefully having a sound base from doing that, we've done a lot of sort of fairly blue sky, big scale technology development work. And that's where we've learned a lot, how you do these big ambitious things and still pay the bills every day. So the two ones that are really sort of current for us is Albion process. Probably in the room, a few of you will have heard about it and heard people talk about it. It's essentially a commercial process now, so it's gone from being an idea that took a long time to mature, but it's out in the market, being very effective in industry. It's pretty mature technology now, and that's to deal with refractory gold processing. And then the Toowong process we'll talk about a bit more, is dealing with another big scale global mining problem, and that is uncontrolled arsenic circulating around the world in copper concentrates. Just talk a bit about the Albion process. It came about a long history, and a long history driven by necessity. So the Albion process technology really is inextricably linked with the IsaMill, the development of the IsaMills. And IsaMills came about because of McArthur River mine mainly. That MIM for 50 years owned the McArthur River lead zinc mine in the Northern Territory. It had very difficult metallurgy because a low grade of metamorphism meant that it hadn't developed sort of large mineral grain sizes. It was very fine grain, very hard to separate and make pure concentrates. MIM battled with it from the 60s through to the 90s, and the breakthrough with McArthur River was developing effective technology for very fine grain mineral separation. That was the IsaMills. And to me, it's one of the great stories of adapting technology where IsaMills were originally developed by a company called Netsch in Germany for small scale ultrafine grinding of pigments and things like that, and identified as being something that could be scaled up. And they were scaled up from 20-litre vessels to now we have 10 cubic metre vessels with 3 megawatts of power in them. And that enabled the McArthur River project to go ahead. And then as that sort of process went on, then it was recognised that ultrafine grinding and oxidation of ultrafine mineral particles was a way of dealing with refractory gold. Refractory gold is where your gold is bound up in sulfide minerals and the cyanide doesn't get at the gold. Conventionally things like roasting was used to deal with the sulfide minerals to break them up. Later on bio-oxidation, pressure oxidation, all in varying degrees environmentally difficult or high capital or difficult to operate. And we recognized that using Albion to ultrafine grind minerals that then were at a particle size that oxidized rapidly in atmospheric conditions was another way of dealing with these ores, and it's proved to be. So Albion is very much now part of the language in dealing with refractory gold, and I think probably demonstrated to be in many cases lower capital costs, lower operating costs, and simpler to operate. Hans Liang, sitting here, looks after the Albion from Core's side, so he's the expert on that subject. And it's such an easy thing to sell, Hans, isn't it? And it all sprung out of this necessity of dealing with McArthur River ores, translating a technology to a different use altogether, to use in mineral scale ultrafine grinding, and translating it again into dealing with refractory gold. So Albion is now out in the market and working very well. Strategically in all of this, our laboratory in Albion has been very important. That that this laboratory has been around since 1982 when it was established by MIM as part of actually the whole research process into MacArthur River and similar problems, which we now operate as a commercial laboratory. There aren't many of these in the world that have the facilities and the capability, and and it's a key asset in selling the technology to industry. That we've got all this sort of technical support available. Let's just look at a little example of Albion, and again, this is where you really learn, is take it out into the commercial world. Our absolute sort of reference project right now is the GPM Gold project in Armenia. This was a long-standing mine that had run in the Soviet era on an ore body that became increasingly refractory with depth, not an uncommon problem. At the time they came to us, they were operating with recoveries of 20 to 30%, and it came into new hands, and actually they identified the Albion process as a potential solution. So we started working on this in 2012, and for lots of reasons it worked very well, and we'll come back to the reasons later on, but from a technical point of view, it did what was intended. Gold recoveries got up to well over 90%, more like 95% or more, and very stable. The project started quickly and has been very stable since then. It was important. It's now something like 50% over nameplate capacity, so they've got better and better at running it. So it's performed very well at that level. The owner, GPM Gold, well, we very much like delighting parties, so much so that they signed a collaboration agreement to actually themselves act as an agent in the Russian-speaking world. Currently there are 7 Albion plants worldwide, and there's more in the pipeline. And I think it's out there demonstrating that it's a superior technology for many refractory gold ores. The importance of GPM Gold can't be underestimated. That having a great reference site, and actually the fact that it was in a frontier area with an unskilled workforce, and that it's been stable and easy to operate, are really important. As I said earlier, the isomill is a critical part of this, for the ultrafine grinding part of the process. So just some of the things that helped Albion get going. So the attributes, this is the things we sell, are that it's it demonstrates very high recoveries of gold. It actually is in current operation, so you've got it working in a real life environment. For a client buying it, it has process guarantees, and so remember that bit. That's very important, that someone big like Glencore is prepared to put their money behind the performance of the process. It has lower capital costs. I think very importantly, it's got relatively low operator skill requirements, so you don't need hundreds of highly skilled operators, and we work in a skills depleted world. The whole sort of feasibility study ramp up and commissioning process is quick and painless, and we can help them all the way. So I think a pathway to commercialization for a client is very important, and it's kind of bulletproof, so it can deal with a wide variety of feed grades and so on. So it's not a sensitive instrument in use. So I think some of the things that helped us there were, I'm recapping a bit, but we had strong third parties sort of reviewing it, independent parties, and giving good information to the market on the operating costs and the capital costs and the performance. A great reference site, for any technology, having a real world reference site is important. Albion requires minimal samples, and sometimes you look at a feasibility study and you wonder why it costs $10 million to do a feasibility study on a project, and it could be that $7 million or $5 million of that was just getting samples. And it's sometimes easy to overlook that bit. Getting a big metallurgical sample is very expensive. we've now, Albion can work on lesser samples because things like scale up are really well understood. They can be demonstrated at a bench scale or a pilot scale, and we really understand scale up, and that's very important. And then all the pre-production, the process of going through feasibility studies, the engineering, the building commissioning. We've thought about the support steps at every part of the way, so a client has got reliable support. We don't leave them to, try and sort of recruit support for these things. We can give them seamless support all the way, and it's quite quick. And actually at the end of the day, having this partnership between Core and Glencore, having a big corporation like Glencore behind this really helps, and particularly the fact that they're prepared to guarantee the process. I'll just move on to another. This is the second of our technology challenges right now, and this is the Tuong process. And the issue we're dealing with here is that quite notably over the last 10 to 15 years globally, the arsenic content, particularly of copper sulfide concentrates, has gone up. And that is, I guess, there's a few reasons driving that. We are dealing with more complex ore bodies, getting deeper into porphyries. We're probably developing ore bodies that, because of arsenic, were less likely to be tackled 10 or 15 years ago. Some of the kind of reference clean sulfide concentrates are getting dirtier. So we have quite a rapid build-up in arsenic appearing in copper concentrates around the world. And this is a bad problem. So, probably the industry route right now for dealing with arsenic in copper cons is to blend dirty cons with clean cons, and then you just spread the problem wider. So the same amount of arsenic ends up in the smelter. And when arsenic appears in a smelter in copper concentrate, it gets volatilized, it goes up the stack, it may end up in the baghouse dusts where it's an unstable poisonous compound, or it may just simply become fugitive and end up around the countryside. And certainly in China, there's been a lot of uncontrolled metallurgical activities causing massive scale soil pollution and water pollution. In response, most countries that import concentrates now have got much stricter limits on how much arsenic can be imported. So you've got more arising, less willingness to take it. The only answer really on big scale right now is let's do lots of blending, and so we need an answer for this. And we're working on Tuong as an answer. I think one of the interesting things now is there's probably 10 or 15 sort of tier 1 copper projects around the world that are not being developed because of arsenic. And there's 1 or 2 ones that are being developed with arsenic and having terrible problems. So it's I think it really is a problem that's here now. So what is the Tuong process? And this started off, by the way, the sort of provenance of this was again a problem, and that was that MIM later strata owned the Tampakan big copper gold porphyry in the Philippines that has very high arsenic, and they came looking for a solution, and Core and Xstrata at the time then developed the Tuong process to deal with particularly Tampakan's situation. And what does it do? It actually uses quite well-known chemistry. So the heart of the chemical process is not particularly novel here, and that's using an alkaline sulfide leach to leach out the arsenic from the final copper concentrate. So you have your normal concentrator producing a copper sulfide concentrate, and then the alkaline sulfide leach can very selectively leach out arsenic and antimony, and it leaves the concentrate in a very clean form that can be sent to smelters, and it behaves well in the smelter. The clever thing about the technology was mainly getting the chemistry such that we could recycle the sodium hydroxide, which is the reagent. And that's probably the important bit of innovation, was recycling the reagents. It's not a once-through reagent, which would have killed the costs. We initially worked with Xstrata on that. That was because they had a problem with the Tampacking project. Actually, as time went by, they sold the project, and the IP reverted back to core. And we, since that time, we've done a number of things to advance the project, and this is where funding becomes a question. So we've done a couple of collaborations, and we've accessed a couple of grant schemes, and in a way we act very much like a research institution here. These are the places researchers go for funding. So we've had a couple of industry collaborators who funded phases of work. We have one at the moment. And we've also accessed two commercialisation funding programs, one of them being what's called Accelerating Commercialisation for the Commonwealth Government. And we're currently in the middle of a Advanced Queensland Ignite Ideas grant programs. And they've been they're really very helpful. Just maybe then thinking about sort of, you've got a bit of innovation, and here's my kind of checklist of how do we get this through to be a commercial technology. And this is where where I think you're starting to deal with factors that are not necessarily dealt with in a research project. But you've really got to keep your eye on all of these things. And there's a couple of good ways of measuring how well you're moving towards something which is commercial. Now one of them is the TRL system. You might be familiar with this, technology readiness level. And it's a way of measuring sort of how mature a technology is to the point where it can actually be deployed commercially. It was actually originally developed by NASA in 1974. And it's quite powerful, and at the lowest level, TRL1 is just a hypothetical solution to a problem. We haven't tested it. It's purely a technical proposition, and there's no substantiating evidence. And then it goes in logical steps through to the point where at TRL9, it's what you call a bankable grade asset. It's mature, it's got known standards and performance expectations. Market and technology risks are not driving investment decisions. There's proponent capability, pricing, and other market forces then driving uptake. So what does that mean? Technology 9, you've got a fully mature technology. It means the actual system's been proven through successful operations, so not just experiments or demonstrations. All of the operational sort of systems are in place, so that's hardware and software. The actual system is being demonstrated in its operational environment. All supporting documentation's in place. You've got successful operational experience, and all the support engineering and other services are in place. And if you think back to GPM goals, it ticks all those boxes, and that's one of Albion's sort of. You can say all these things are available for Albion process in GPM Gold. There's another index which is also, I think, useful, called the Commercialisation Readiness Index. This was developed by ARENA, by the Australian Renewable Energy Agency, and ARENA's job in recent years has been to find sort of renewable energy technologies and provide them with funding. And so it's faced with a whole bunch of technologies that come to it, and it developed the Commercialisation Readiness Index, CRI, as a way of measuring whether that was really really something that should be invested in. And that sort of goes from, it sort of overlaps a bit the TRLs, but it starts off, here's a hypothetical commercial proposition. CRI2, we've done a commercial trial at a small scale. 3 is a commercial scale-up. Scale-up's very important, by the way, I'll come back to that in a minute. Number 4, multiple commercial applications. And then 5 and 6, it's in the market. You know, it may gradually become a commodity in the market. So, just to try and wrap some of these things together, and this is my checklist, and I'm actually kind of interested in feedback on this, because I think this is a really good checklist of things you need to think about if you want your technology to be commercial. And I've got a column there on the Albion process, because we think it ticks all those boxes, and that's why it's working. So, you know, number one, you've actually got to meet all the criteria of TRL 9. So, which means it's no longer a hypothetical proposition. It's not just being demonstrated in an artificial environment. It's out there in commercial use. So that, you know, that's where you need to get to. You've actually got to fulfill a need to which a value can be attached. And it's going to be a credible value. So if the client cannot translate it into value, it won't get used. And quite often we come up with elegant technical solutions, but a client, you know, mining company particularly, at the end of the day, if it cannot put a value on it, you know, it'll be hard to get it through a decision-making process in a mining company. It might still be a great idea, but you know, you've got to think of ways of demonstrating the value. Demonstrating current operations and willingness to be a reference site. So that's really important. There's nothing like, you know, even if it's a demonstration scale, but if it's in a real life environment, very powerful. And it's also very important that the site is willing to be a reference site, willing to have visitors and share information. So as soon as you start talking about site deployments, you've got to have that conversation about, are you willing to talk about this? The science behind the technology is fully understood. You know, I think you've really got to you've got to understand the drivers behind the technology. And you know, it's probably a conversation we've had in CRCO a fair bit about sort of a great engineering and the ability of ore bodies to deport in certain ways. And you know, one of the challenges is to move that on from just being observation to being actually understanding how it happens and what are the levers to make to you know, for large scale sort of grade by size separation, for example. It's a bit weak if it's still just an observation. And at CRCO we work hard at trying to make it a sort of, you know, something where we understand the drivers. Reliable scale up. Technology really is sort of always going to struggle if it can only be demonstrated at full scale. So having something that can be demonstrated at a demo scale and then scale up as reliable is really important. And I'll go back to grade by size separation. It's been done throughout the history of mineral processing, and large projects like Bougainville, decades ago, we were doing large scale screening and sorting. But it had to be done very, very large scale, demonstration scale, to just prove that it worked. And that's high risk and very expensive. So something that you do eventually on, it's reliable, really important. When you're trying to deploy it at a mine site, again, if you can demonstrate it at a sort of without threatening the entire site, that's really important. So, the way the mining industry works and behaves, people are very unwilling to take a risk that threatens the entire mine site. And perhaps going back to grade engineering, we've been very successful on mine sites by doing grade engineering solutions on part of the mine, on a bench or on a portion of the ore, where you can actually demonstrate the results, but it doesn't threaten the entire operation. If you had to dive in and make a big step change technology that threatened the entire operation, it's always hard to sell. Process guarantees are very important, so it's worth thinking, quite early on in the technology about, is someone actually at substance willing to guarantee it? It's great psychologically. And I think, again, going back to the sort of big bang sort of whole operational change, if you can make a change in small bites, the small capital chunks, that's a lot easier. And you can scale up in stages. I think the sort of innovations based around sort of well-known unit processes or equipment are helpful, and to some extent, that's Albion and it's great engineering. That it's all sort of relatively well understood individual processes just being run in a particular way, so there's low risk of individual unit processes. Toowong's a bit trickier for us because it's getting into quite unique circuits and some chemistry. Delivering the technology to the site. So there is going to be a point where you have to think about in the commercial world how we're actually going to do tech transfer. So from let's say Albion side, we've got a pretty seamless process of doing lab scale testing, initial process designs, then sort of simple financial analysis, getting up to full DFS, all the engineering, procurement, delivery, and commissioning. Every part of that's been thought of, and you've really got to be able to hand feed every part of that nowadays. We've done a lot of efforts with both Toowong and with Albion to partner up with engineering companies who can deliver all of the detailed engineering and site delivery. And that it ramps up quickly, by the way. So I think one of the things I'd say about Albion is the history so far is that it's got a very quick ramp up. And probably within a year you will get it to be stable, steady state. Is that a reasonable statement, Hans? It's a big sweeping statement.
Yeah, in terms of penalty curve, it's a fairly quick ramp up. And actually for the case of GPM, a lot of the delays are getting to nameplate production sort of flotation aspect as opposed to the
other aspects, yeah. And there's been other sort of very elegantly thought through technologies like BioOx, which have taken in some cases 10 years to get to anywhere near nameplate. So commercial ramp up. Mine sites are volatile environments, so they're not steady state. Really, we try and think they're steady state, but I think it's any innovation is going to cope with sort of fairly volatile environment. This is processing technology. The fact is that ore grades and mineralogies and everything else will change hour by hour, day by day. So they've got to be able to operate in that environment. You are definitely dealing worldwide with people are expensive on lines, and high-skilled people are very expensive. So anything that can operate with kind of relatively low levels of on-site expense and support are good. Project financing, you're getting into a whole new world here, but Albion projects were project financed early on, and probably the world's best analysts of risk are banks, and they can analyse metallurgical risk as well. So they'll go and hire some of the people in this room, come and talk to them about the risk. And it's very helpful if you've had projects that have been project financed with your technology in it, because banks are going to value risk. If they give a tick, it's a good sign. And users, mining companies, put a lot of value on that. And if it improves social license to operate, that's a big push, of course, today. So both Albion and Toowong, we've got some social license arguments. Now I'm just going to come at this from a slightly different angle now, just for a minute, because I thought you'd find this interesting. It's because I talked to someone in the venture capital world, and this is very recent, and I got his views on how he would evaluate a technology and its readiness for commercialization. And he's a person who's investing in technology, and I just wanted to make sure I wasn't coming at it from too much of an industry-centric point of view. So here's someone who's essentially entirely commercial, and he's looking at technologies and he's trying to work out which ones will actually make it in the commercial world. And these were his comments. That one of them was, you need to involve serial commercially minded entrepreneurs, and that means people who know how to take business risk and actually have done it more than once. So somewhere or another, the technology developer needs to hook up with the right commercial skills that can take something from an idea to being a business. To be the easiest path will be if you're dealing with a problem that matters. And actually we get fed back a bit from industry, where's the burning bridge? And And so, you know, it really has got to be something where there's a high pain point in industry, which means there's a high value economic lever. So there's a big prize that can be won by using your technology, or a big problem that could be solved. He's particularly keen in step change improvement, not incremental improvement. So one of the things that will make a step change and therefore have a high value attached to it. He repeats some of my words in saying, try to work out the economic value of the solution as soon as possible, because at the end of the day, it's the economic lever that drives the customers to change their behavior. What is the quickest, lowest cost way of de-risking a technology? What's the quickest, lowest cost method to de-risk it and demonstrating it? He likes modular technologies where the economics are independent of large scale, so you can actually do it incrementally, and it can be bolted on, and you don't risk the underlying production. And then scale up. He comes back, and this is a financier talking here, that scale up's important. So, you know, he likes things you can demonstrate at a non-production scale, and you know what it will look like when you get up to full production scale. So that's, you know, they're all very useful tips and things. Probably, you know, I think none of us, you know, ourselves included, we haven't always thought about all these things as we try to get something into the market. I think probably the other thing that's widely noted right now is that, you know, most mining companies, nearly all of them, have innovation as actually part of their strategy. Now, does anyone in the room here think they're doing it well?
No.
Neville, you know, you're doing, you know, have you been part of it? You know, everyone sees innovation as being a strategy, and yet, I think without being rude, you know, mining companies are struggling as to how to actually do it. And they're struggling because they work in a volatile environment. They're maybe a bit skills depleted as well. They've found it quite hard to do long-term things, even with a high value, in a sort of changing environment. So they generally haven't been that good at it. So you've got to try and remember that mining companies have got very low bandwidth to deal with innovation. Now, in a way, to me, that's actually an opportunity, because, you know, if you get it right, they will recruit you to do it. And you know, we've had experiences of getting recruited in to, you know, help them do the innovation thing. So don't expect them, if you bowl up with a great idea, to just pick up the ball and run with it, because they're often just got so many other priorities and so little bandwidth. But they do all have innovation as a core strategy, and you know, we've got to play a role in helping them there. It's made life very, of course, you know, we're looking at things like certainty of research funding from industry. That might have happened 10 years ago, 20 years ago. It doesn't happen now. What's in the pipeline for core? So we're still collaborating with Glencore on rolling out Albion, so we see that being a quite mature product in the market. We've got great gold prices at the moment, which is hopefully encouraging people to look at some of the more complex ore bodies around the place. Now is a very commercial solution. We're at quite an advanced stage with Toulon. We have a major collaborator, and we have some Queensland government grant funding. So we're doing some quite detailed bits of pilot plant testing to demonstrate parts of the process, and it's going to lead to an engineering design for a large-scale demonstration plant, 100,000 ton a year plant. We're thinking about where feed's coming from for that plant. We'll probably continue in collaboration there. I think now we're at a point where we've got an industry collaborator. We may actually bring in other collaborators from industry, and it's getting very near, you know, big scale commercial deployment. We just formed a relationship with a South African company called IPEX. And IPEX has got some very unique capability in using ion exchange for purifying low tenor liquors. So that means you're sort of plucking out elements from liquors at very low tenors, unlike a normal SXEW circuit. So it could be used for cleaning up effluent waters from mines. But one of the interesting low tenor liquors that you can deal with is vanadium leaching, from vanadium leaching. And we're working on a project to this is driven by the whole new battery industry thing, is to make vanadium flow battery electrolytes, which is
the vanadium electrolyte. So using some clever technology to change the cost base of that. We've got a pilot plant we just built down the road in Albion, and we're just engaging with one or two now commercial customers with projects to try and demonstrate this technology. We've also got a relationship with a company in Turkey, which has got some very clever, unique atmospheric nickel cobalt leaching technologies for heat leaching, nickel cobalt ore bodies, where the traditional problem is very long leach times and very high acid consumption, and they appear to have a couple of answers for that. And ZRE, and to some extent on IPEX as well, really kind of small, innovative companies. They see having a relationship with Core, where we've got substantial laboratory facilities and good connections in industry. They've just seen us as a way of helping them to commercialise their technology. So we're working hard with them to see if we can get something commercial out of that. We're always on the lookout for other technologies, particularly in hydrogen metallurgy, I'd say. That's our expertise. So we get lots of approaches, we see lots of people's technologies. You or people you know may have things that you're working on. That's always of interest to us. We think we've got quite a good track record of taking some of these things and making them commercial. That was it. Thank you very much.